아무튼 됐습니다. 고민 해결. 스케일 값이 변했다. 오케이, 오케이. 너무 간단 명료하게 끝나버렸죠.
So this is the small. So let's go Shift D and then X to just move it along the X-axis. This
요거를 이제 오브젝트 모드에서 X로 옮기시네요. 저는 옮겨가지고
is going to be the medium one. So edit mode, and I'm going to go into toggle wireframe and vertice select mode. And now selecting the
네. 그다음에 에딧 모드 가서 토글 엑스레이 마우스 왜 이렇게 된 거죠? 아, 왜 이거 안 돼? 저거 왜 안 되지? 이거 이렇게 해야 되나?
the top part of the sprinkle, hit G, Z, and I'm going to move, oops, if you've got proportional editing, turn that off. G, Z, move that up.
비례 뭐?
And I'm going to move, oops, if you've got proportional editing, turn that off. G, Z.
어떻게 끄는데? 비례 편집 어떻게 끄는데? 이건가? 맞네.
Z, move that up. Okay, that'll be the medium one. Yep.
너무 길어. 영키? 아, 요거 맞죠? 아무튼 숨은 그림 아니 틀린 그림 찾기 오지게 하고 있어요. 에키.
And now Shift D,
X나?
X, move it along. This is going to be the long one. So edit mode, and again, G.
그다음 얘를 DX 에딧 모드 G Z
G, Z, move it up. And this is going to be the long sprinkle. I don't go too long, maybe that long. Okay. And then I want
이 정도 낫지?
to make a bent sprinkle. It's slightly like curved. So Shift D, X, move it across. And now with this one, if I was to try to like curve this out, there's not enough information here. Like if I move that, it's just a straight edge there. So if I want to make it curved, I got to have more geometry there. So like we've done in the past, Control R is how you create a loop cut. So when you do that,
컨트롤 R
that it says where do you want to put it. I want more than one though, so I'm going to scroll up till I get just a bunch of loops until I get what looks like square faces on those points, somewhere around that. I don't want to go too high poly. Yeah, like that. What is that? That's in the bottom left-hand corner. 8 cuts.
8.
Okay. Click, and then it's saying where do you want to place it. Right click to cancel the movement so it places it right in the center. And now,
클릭. 라이트 클릭.
yep, there we go. Okay. Now we've got
이게 아닌데? 이게 아닌데? 이게 아닌데? 왜 또 달라? 달라. 아, 오케이. 투시.
got this one over here that is just long and straight but low poly, and this one same shape but high poly. So to add a bend to it, in previous tutorials I actually went into like edit mode and we did like proportional editing, and it was just complicated and it actually didn't look great. I've learned actually there's a modifier that'll do it very simply. Go to your modifier stack, add modifier. You could find it inside here, or you could search for it, but it's the simple deform modifier. So add that.
헐. 심볼. 심볼 디포머.
And by default it is wrong, so change it from twist to bend. And look at that, we've got our sprinkle. Ha! And you can very easily, whoops, change the amount from a little curve to a large curve.
밴드.
And I think somewhere around the 30-degree mark. You will notice though that it's like it's bent more at this angle, and that's because it's bending it according to the origin point. So you see these little dots? You might have
30도 정도?
wondered what they are in Blender. That's called your origin point, and it's used for a lot of things. Like if you rotate an object, you can see it's rotating from the point of that origin point. Like physics, a bunch of things use the origin point. The best way to think of it is like the center of mass for the object. So generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, you want it to be in the center of the object. And you can do it very quickly. You select multiple objects. You want to clear its origin point. Shift, select all of them, and then right click, and then say set origin to geometry. And now you can see it's put it in the middle. And now our curve is actually based on the starting in the middle, which is what we want. So
다해서 set origin geometry. Okay.
yay for us. Now I need to apply this or else the next part it'll go wonky. So apply your simple deform so that it's actually, realized
다음에 플레이 해주고.
onto the mesh. Okay, so going to your outline, you can see we started from humble beginnings, but we've now got too much going on, and it's all starting to get a little bit chaotic. So the way you organize things in your outline and in Blender generally is you can group things together by creating collections. So by default, we've actually got one collection already, just called collection, but we can create new collections by this little button in the top right-hand corner to create a new collection. And I want to create it outside of our, I mean, I don't actually know if we need, like, I don't know why it creates a collection for you for no, I mean, you could just, it's in the scene collections. Anyways, I don't know if we actually need that one. So we create a new collection just by hitting that, and we can double click it to rename it to be whatever it is we want. So I'm going to call this sprinkles, okay? And because we have two types of sprinkles, we have the sphere.
별님 어서오세요. new 왜 안 보이게 해놨어? 지들 멋대로. 오늘 엔딩입니다. 도너츠 엔딩.
Round sprinkle, and then we have these long sprinkles. I'm going to create two other collections within this collection. So hitting new again, you can see it's placed it underneath it, and I'm going to call this one round. And then clicking sprinkles again, I'll add
온. 어제보다 더 춥다고요?
another collection.
빙하기잖아
And
내일.
this one I will call long. Oh, wait, sorry. This one, long.
롱. 마이 갓. 여기서 생기면 안 되고 여기서 네 개 필요하겠지?
There we go. Okay, so to move something to a collection, you can do it one of two ways. One, you can select the sphere, which is the round. Remember, it's this little guy over here, the little tiny round sprinkle. You can just drag that into the that collection, and you can see it's now moved it there.
그래 이 녀석. 잘하고.
The other way is in your 3D viewport. If you select all of the objects that you want to move to a new collection, hit M and it brings up this, and you just say move to the sprinkles long sub collection. There we go. And now they're all moved there. And now this one here, if you wanted to give this a name, you could. We got the camera, we got the light, we got the plane. Yeah, you know what? Let's move our donut and our icing. Let's move that to a new collection as well. So M, and we can actually create a new collection from the move options as well. So I'm going to go new, and let's call this let's say donuts, because we're going to duplicate it and make more donuts in the future. So donuts. Okay, great. So now this one here has got the camera, the light, and the plane. So I'm going to do what I sometimes do with a scene is just call this one ENV, which is for
아. 아. 요거 선택해서 뉴 컬렉션에서 도너츠 차라리 얘기지. 얼어 죽는 줄 알았다고? 지금 몇 도지? 지금이 마이너스 9도. 마구 10시인데 마이너스 9도. 내일 새벽 몇 도냐면 마이너스 13도. 저 마이너스 13도에 일어나야 돼요. 아침 5시에 일어나야 돼. 빨리 합시다. 아침 5시에 일어났다가 운동 갔다가 한의원 갔다가 와야 돼. 다시 왜 일어나냐고? 일해야지. 요렇게 해도 되지만 얘를 끌어다가 쏙? 어라? 여기 들어가면 안 되는데. 나와. 얘는 누구고 얘는 또 누구야? 아, 뭐예요? 얘를 ENV 이 사람 께 한국어로 있다고요? 그건 모르겠는데. 제가 없는 영하 16도. 아니 혹한기냐고. 혹한기 왔다고.
environment.
전
Since
국민
this is a
혹한기.
tutorial, I'll actually just type it out. I'm not going to be lazy. Environment. Okay, so we've got some organization in our scene so that as we add and grow our scene, it's not going to get too crazy. All right, so it's also good that we've created collections because we can now use that to scatter across the geometry nodes. So with our donut here, so the icing and the donut, we're going to create a duplicate, and this is going to be the variant with the long sprinkles. So Shift D and then hit X to move it along the X axis. So let's just place
도너츠를요? 맨발에 슬리퍼 반팔 반바지 롱패딩. 우리 데스.
next to it, and then clicking your icing.
아, 저
You can see
남자라서
we've got the
열이
modify
많아요.
stack that
겨울에
we
반팔
created geometry nodes
반바지
on. And
국룰이거든요.
if we were to start tweaking
할
this and make
정도의
this
날씨가
look
아니.
like long sprinkles, it would apply to this one over here because we can see that little number next to it, and that number, if you hover over it, I think we mentioned it before, but it displays the number of users sharing this data. So any change you make to this is going to be reflected on that one. So if we click the 2 button, it's now independent, so we'll now have 2 different versions. So the one on the left, the original one, let's call that round sprinkles.
다음에 오브젝트 보드니까 도너츠 다 선택해서 컨트롤 D X축으로 옮겨서 요 녀석에 근데 잠깐만 얘 서브 디비전이 왜 아직도 살아있냐? 툴을 눌러. 추리를 덜한다고. 사장님, 어서 가서 발로란트를 하여라. 이래야 돼? 라그 X 라운지 가서 글 좀 써주세요. 하실 분, 나 이거 할 테니까. 일 시키기. 라운드 원본 버전을 라운드 스프링클
And the one on the right, let's call that one long. Brain fart for a second there. Long sprinkle.
죄송 S 아 얘를 롱 스프링클스
Sprinkles. Okay. And
고정 게임만
now
한다고요?
with
고정
that
게임
object
아니라니까.
selected, let's go
밥
back to
게임이라.
the geometry nodes tab. Okay. All right. So make sure you're looking at the right object. Make sure it's the
지오메트리
one with
안
the
해도
long sprinkles in the
된다고
name.
했었는데 그냥
And
일단
if we were to
똑같이
start
따라하는
editing
거니까.
here, we would have
따라할게요.
one where we would have made one big mistake, and it's because this is actually not the long sprinkles node setup. We clicked the pin button. Remember that? The pin means it's always going to be there, even if it's another object with a different geometry node setup. So remember.
아니에요. 일찍 끝나서 오히려 뒤통수 칠 수도 있음.
yeah, it's a common mistake.
비긴즈 11시 오픈이었는데 10시 45분에 열었다니까? 통수 레전드임.
always do it. You forget you've got pin on and then you start changing things and it does the wrong one. So make sure you're looking at the one that has long sprinkles in the name. Okay, so the bit that obviously matters the most is this bit where it goes into our instance on points node, and we've currently got it connected to a sphere. So, I mean, you could change that to another object, but that won't help us because we've got more than one object. We want to scatter 4 different objects across it. So we can delete that and instead just
delete.
drag from your outliner. Don't just, if you click on it, oh yeah, if you click off it, it's just going to disappear. So make sure you don't do it. You've clicked the icing, but you need to click and drag into your node setup. And now it's got a collection info node rather than object info node. Drag that into your instance input, and nothing happened.
아무 일도 일어나지 않습니다. 장난. 오픈에 누가 올려놨다고요? 가서 깽판 치자고요? 깽판
It
뭐?
has actually happened, but it's off center in a weird place.
네? 하늘 위에 생겼다고? 진짜네? 징그러워.
Why is it doing that? It's because of the way 3D software handles data. It's now doing it on its like global or local position, not relative to, anyway, it doesn't matter. What you need to do is check 3 boxes whenever you use collections to scatter. Separate, reset children. Now it's on the mesh correctly, and then
separate, reset.
You can see it's actually using all 4 of them on each point. So then you click pick instance, and now it's going to use one of those, not all 4 of them together.
되고 있어요.
Okay, so it's good. It's using it, but what's going on? Well, the reason this one was easier with its round sprinkles is that the rotation of the objects didn't matter because it was round. Now that we have long sprinkles, you can see the rotation matters, and it's currently screwed up. So how do we fix that? The first way, well, yeah, there's a number of things you need to do to make it work correctly. You'll see, is we want to take the rotation of the face. So the face of these mesh here, we want it to affect the objects, right? So we take the output of our distribute points on faces, the rotation of that, and drag it into the rotation input of the instances. And now you can see it's having some
로테이션을 로테이션으로. 11시 2시 사이에요. 천일염 같다고요? 아직 색깔도 안 입혀서 그래.
effect. It's still not right, but that is because these sprinkles are currently just pointing
저는
outwards.
12시
So it thinks, okay, well, you want to point them
넘어야 될 때.
outwards. Anyways, to fix that, I mean, you could fix it a number. You could actually fix it in geometry nodes. This is simpler. So if we just rotate those sprinkles along the x-axis, so R, X, right? And then we just want to lie them down flat. So essentially 90 degrees. You could type in 90 degrees, or holding down Control will move it in 5-degree increments. Okay, so 90, and then do a single click. Okay.
아이고. 이 녀석을 레프트 미들 클릭? 아니잖아.
outwards. Anyways, to fix that, I mean, you could fix it a number. You could actually fix it in geometry nodes. This is simpler. So if we just
화면
rotate
움직이는
those
거구나.
sprinkles along the x.
R 눌러서. 잘못돼 있어요. R 눌러서. 왜 나머지가 움직이죠? 아니라 바닥도 눌렸다. R, X 컨트롤해서 Shift 누웠죠?
Axes. So R, okay, so 9 worked. Well, it's because, as I mentioned before, when you're scaling or rotating things, it's not actually saved to the object. So to apply it, you have to go Control A and then say rotation. Now that we
무슨 A? 컨트롤 A? 누웠다.
we've done that, it's worked correctly. All right. So now you can see what I said by you need to do a lot to make it work correctly. The rotation is working, but it's not doing what you would expect. And that's because geometry nodes are so flexible. You have to tell it exactly what you want to do. We want actually random rotation. So around each of the points, we don't want to each have the exact same rotation. We need to randomize it. So for that, if you want to tweak the rotation on anything between this point here, on this dotted blue line, let's just move that out of the way, we need to add Shift A, Utilities, Rotation, Rotate, not Euler, Euler. Yes, I know. They went with the weird pronunciation. I think it was a French.
혼자 신났네. 얘를 올려주고 New Utility Rotation 아닌데? 방금 했는데 방금 까먹는 거 무엇? 맞는데? 유틸리티 로테이션에 로테이션 울러
Euler. Yes, I know. They went with the weird pronunciation. I think it was a Frenchman, right? Could be German. Doesn't matter. Same, right? Just to annoy
same 우리나라 말 아니었어? 쌤?
all the Europeans. Anyways, rotate Euler, and we're just going to drop it on that line till it lines up. Okay, so
얘를 여기다가 넣어주면
nothing's happened currently, but with this, we could change the rotation of our sprinkles up here. But you'll notice that as you rotate it, it's kind of weird. It's not the rotation that you would expect for each point. It's the relative to the actual object as a whole, right? Which just means we need to change from object to local. And now, as you move it around, you can see we're able to rotate those sprinkles. But again, it's not changing like randomizing it. It's giving a solid
때부터 있었던
value.
한국말이죠.
So to randomize it, if we drag out of the rotate by input and then type in random, it'll bring up this, and we're looking for random value. Click.
Random
And now we
random value. 네, 자세한 설명 고맙습니다.
we get this.
감사하고요.
Ooh. So this node looks kind of scary, right? It's got a whole bunch of different values in it, and it says vector, and it's very, very foreign. It's got so this node, and its point of view, with very foreign. It's actually easier to understand it from a float.
벡터에서 플로트로 바꿔주고.
Point of view. With the random value, if it's in a float state, it's going to generate a value from 0 to 1 on each point. So if you've got like 10 points, one of them is going to be like 0.015, one of them is going to be like 0.92, and one's, whatever. when it's in vector state, it's the exact same thing. You've got min and you've got max, but there are 3 values. And the reason for that is that there are 3 axes. There's the x-axis, there is the y-axis, and there's the z-axis. And same here, right? So you're able to define what type of rotation on each axis. So if we set both, and by the way, if you want to change multiple values at once in Blender, you can just click and drag down, and then you can change all of them. So we set all of them to 0. And now you could see this bottom one is going to be the Z because it's X, Y, Z. It doesn't tell you, like, I don't know, because it's vector math. I guess there's other areas of Blender. Anyway, but this is the Z axis. If we increase this one, you can see that's the main one that we want to change, right? Because that's the one that makes the most difference. Now you might also know, looking at this, you're probably thinking like, okay, well we need to rotate it by.
징그러. 클릭하고 아닌데? 알트 오케이. 발로 일반전에서 혼자 오버워치 하고 있다고요?
360 degrees, so we would set this to 360. But you can see they're more than rotating fully already. So what value is this exactly? This is radians. Oh, just to get real. So radians, degrees. Actually, like I had to ask ChatGPT before I recorded this. What's the difference? Radians are more mathematical and easier for mathematical equations. It's the circumference of pi. No. 2 pi is the circumference. Look, obviously I don't know. But what I'm trying to tell you is, you just need double pi to make it 360 degrees.
포기했다.
Which
이분
is
슈퍼자네.
actually tau to make it really complicated. It's tau. So double pi. So pi is 3.142. Tau is double that. And anyways, you get the idea. So you can type in tau and it'll actually give you the correct value. So that's 300.
혈림
60 degree rotation.
혈림 불나방이지.
We also want it, because you can see this is the other axes, like the middle one spinning around. So we also want it on that one, because we've got a curved one. So let's make that tau. And then this top one is the X, which is actually going to make it like wonky, like, so these will be like seesawing up. So if you increase that, that's where it gets crazy, and you don't really want to use that. You do want a little bit though, because it would make sense if they're sprinkles. They're not going to be completely
여기도 타워.
flat. You're going to have some variance where like some bit has absorbed into the icing at a different angle than another, but just not too much, essentially, or else it starts to look like little marshmallows or whatever all over it. But guys, that's roughly it. That's the hard work. That was, I mean, I know that was very technical, but it was just 2 nodes. Rotate
0.5.
Euler, set it to local, and then this random value, and we're changing that to rotate it. And we did it. We got nice looking rotation. Now, one thing we do have to change is the distance min. So because these longer sprinkles obviously are bigger, then the distance min has to change as well. So we can change that to something that makes sense. Let's go 0.04. That might have actually been pretty perfect. Let's try 3. 3's got a little bit. Oh, actually, you know what? The other thing, again, looking at reference, I like those big chunky looking sprinkles. So I want these to be bigger. So we could, alter the scale of the actual sprinkles, but we're working with geometry nodes and we've actually got a scale value right here. So we could change it here just as easily. So the scale, dragging down, and again, there's not just one value, there's 3 axes, so X, Y, Z, so drag down on all. 1.5 is going to give us some nice, big, chunky looking sprinkles. And now this distance value needs to be a lot bigger. So let's go 0.06. That's actually pretty good. I'm getting pretty good at nailing it. 0.0, no, I was right before. There's always going to be some overlap, right? You're not going to be able to stop it because I was right. Now this distance value needs to be some nice, big, chunky looking sprinkles. And now this distance value needs to be a lot bigger. So let's go 0.0.
1.5에. 이 정도 한다.
0.06. That's actually pretty good. I'm getting pretty good at nailing it. Wait, no, I was right before. There's always going to be some overlap, right? You're not going to be able to stop it because it's not doing object like collisions. It's nothing like that. It's a very simple, again, it's doing a point and then it's creating a radius around it. And if you do the correct amount, which for this is probably something like this, then it looks way too predictable and boring, which we don't want. So 0.006 looks pretty good for me with a scale of 1.5 for these. And that is it. I was going to put in the random color in this part of the tutorial, but I think we've gone over already. So join me in the next part and we will finally add some color to our sprinkles and make this look nice. So join me in the next part.
다음에 색을 낸대요. 드디어 색깔 낸다, 스프링클. 여기까지 하면은
그래픽 디자인 업계를 강타한 인터랙
This is the part where we start making our donuts look sexy. So we're going to be coloring our sprinkles, finally, so it doesn't look so depressing. And then also getting into rendering to start making this actually look pleasing with shadows and light and everything else. So first of all, the sprinkles. Now, as you probably know, you could come in here and you could select a sprinkle and then go, all right, I'm going to make a red sprinkle. And then I'm going to, don't do this by the way, I'm just showing you, make this aqua sprinkle and then a blue sprinkle, right? And this does work, does exactly what you would expect. The problem with this though, is that for one, the color is locked to that specific sprinkle. So this curved sprinkle is always red, okay? And the short sprinkle is always white. The other issue is that this is not easy to change the distribution of those colors. Like if I'm an artist and I'm looking at this, I'm like, that's kind of boring because all the colors is like 25% blue, 25% white, 25, you know. I want to have maybe 80% one dominant color and then a few splashes of complementary colors. I can't do that. So there is a much, much easier way. So first, let me just clear all of these. And I'm going to create one new material. I'm going to call it sprinkles. And I'll actually show you how to quickly apply the same material to multiple objects at the same time because we haven't done that yet. So I'm going to grab my round sprinkle, which is currently still over there by itself. I'll just bring it over here so it's part of the family. There we go. All right.
영어 해. 영어 해. 라운드. 됐나?
So I've got one object with the material that I want to apply them all to. What I need to do is shift select all the objects that I want to have that material. And then lastly, shift select again the object that has the material I want to apply them to. And you know that because it's highlighted yellow, okay? Then hit Control L. This brings up the link or transfer menu, and we want to link the materials. And now you can see our material has a 5 next to it because 5. This brings up the link or transfer menu, and we want to link
Ctrl L. Link materials.
the materials. And now you can see our material has a 5 next to it because 5 objects are sharing this material. And that's it. And now, obviously, because they're linked, it means if I make a change over here, they're all going to be reflected. Great. Now, we're going to do something fancy. So let's go to the shading tab, which gives us access to our nodes. Oh dear, where have I? All right, let's go back. I'm trying to get to that sprinkle. Great. Now, we're going to do something fancy. So let's go to the shading tab, which gives us access to our nodes. Oh dear, where have I? All right, let's go back. I'm trying to get to that sprinkle. Okay.
Shading.
To our nodes. Now, I want to introduce you to a little friend called Shift A, input, the object info node.
A input object info.
A very weird little node that just does some useful things when you might need it. So you see it pop up in a few tutorials. There's a bunch of stuff here that it can do. The most useful one for us in this instance is the random input. Drop that into your base color and let's see what happens. So we've got some gray values, and it's easier to see actually when you look at the donuts.
랜덤을 컬러에. 됐다.
So what this has done is it has assigned a value, a random value for each individual sprinkle between 0 and 1. So because that's then being transferred to color information, it means that, for example, this sprinkle might have got a value of like 0.023, right? And the robot spat that out. And then this one, this whitish looking one, maybe this was 0.89 or something like that. Okay, so it's just transferred those values into color information, which is just blacks to whites. Not very useful right now, but we can use that, those numbers in I'll just show you. Okay, Shift A, we're going to go converter color ramp. Probably, I mean, I might have used this node more than any other node in Blender before. It's like so versatile, used for so many things. So drop it in here between the
convert color ramp 사이에다가 껴넣어.
object info and the principled. And currently it is exactly the same because it's just it's transferring that data into a gradient value of the exact same shades. But we can change this to any color that we want. And look at that. So you can very quickly see this is exactly how we're going to create sprinkles of different colors. Now, one thing you'll note looking at this is that every single sprinkle is a different shade. Like no two sprinkles have the same color right now because this is a gradient. And that's not how it works in the real world because the sprinkles come out of, one constant icing bag, right? Or a machine with the same food dye. So basically all the blue ones would have the exact shade of blue and all the orange ones would have the exact shade of orange. So we need to change this from linear to constant. And now if I slide this across, look at that. We are influencing what percentage now is orange or blue. And this is really cool because it means you get to work like an artist and just create a really nice, appealing looking donut very, very quickly. So I'm going to go with like a light blue over here. And then I'm going to create a new color.
이 사람 민트파네. 뭐를 바꾸랬는데?
Just by hitting the plus button. And then let's give this a purple like that. And I'll make this one pink actually, same shade as our donut, why not? You'll note by the way that I'm not going like full saturation. And that's deliberate because you learn in art that, like saturation and color is quite aggressive, it's quite noisy and quite attention grabbing. And so if you use too much of it, it can be exhausting. So I tend to keep it at like 0.8. Okay, and then I'll also go over here and I'm going to make this white. Let's go, oh, whoop, no, not like that. White, and I'm going to create another one next to it, and this one I'm going to make yellow. Okay, so
색깔 추천받습니다. 색깔 추천받아요. 하면 민트색 꼭 들어가야지. 민트색. 플러스? 아, 플러스. 다음 색깔. 노란색. 아니, 왜 이렇게 되는 거야? 응? 파란색은 식욕이 떨어지는 색이라고 했고, 분홍, 분홍? 초코 참어, 못 참어. 흰색. 근데 저 아저씨 거보다 별로다. 파란색. 아, 보라색.
So just by sliding this around, I could say like less white, more yellow, less yellow, more white, and then I can go, yeah, more blue. It's just a really simple, easy way to create the exact look you're going for. Awesome. Now, something you don't have to do this next part, but it's so easy. Why not? I was looking on Pinterest on like aesthetically pleasing donuts, like trying to make this look really cool.
토레스트
And
뭐야?
I saw like metallic sprinkles, and I was like, that's an interesting idea. What if I made these white and yellow ones metallic, and then they would look silver and gold? So there is a slider in your principled BSDF, technical name that just means it's the shader that does everything. And it's the metallic shader. Look at that. So if I slide this all the way to 1, all my sprinkles are now metallic. And if I slide it all the way to 0, then they are non-metallic. And that's actually how you should use this slider. All materials in the real world are either non-metallic, also known as dielectric materials. So that would be most of the sprinkles. And then some objects are metallic, entirely metallic. There are technically a few rare materials on Earth that have some blend between it, but as a rule, you should not have a value that is between 0 and 1. It should be either 0 or 1. Anyways, so what we can do with this, because we've got this color ramp information here, is I can actually just convert, like I can make a color ramp that is just black and white that just shows which sprinkle is metallic and which one isn't. So if I duplicate this, and here's a pro tip, if you use Control-Shift-D, it will duplicate it, but it will retain its connection. So it just saves you, I don't know, 1 second. And now I'm going to connect that into my metallic input. Now currently this is wrong because this information is, it's just using, it's like color. So we need to be black and white. So this one here, because this is going to represent my dielectric colors, I'm going to set this to black. So it is non-metal. And then this I can delete, and this I can delete, because on the left-hand side of it, it's all black. Sorry, so it's all non-metals. And then over here, these two, the silver and the gold, they're going to be metal. So actually I can delete the gold, and now that's doing exactly what it should. So we've now got dielectric, non-metals, and metals. And the reason it doesn't look like metal, by the way, is because your roughness is here. So if you set it all the way down, you can see it starts to look a lot closer to a metallic sprinkle. And by the way, you can get the exact like position. You can go like 0.7 and then here 0.7, type it in, and then that way it's definitely correct. For whatever reason of mine, this has to be a bug. There's something weird about it, but there's one sprinkle on my donuts, probably not on yours, but it's like
버그 걸렸대 미친. 사에서 다시 복사해. 똑같이 따라해요. 컬러 컬러를 메탈릭 얘를 검은색으로 하고 그리고 7, 7 나는 버그 없나? 없네. 버그는 없는데 노란색이 금색이 아니야. 내 눈이 이상한 건가?
it's purple up here, but then it crept over into the metallic category down here, which shouldn't be possible, but evidently it's just on my donut. I've never seen it before, but one of them has actually snuck over. Doesn't matter. It's it can be the rare purple metallic one. All right, but I don't want these other ones to be shiny, at least that shiny. So I'm going to again duplicate this, Control-Shift-D. And with this, if I plug this into my roughness input, just like before, these black and white values will decide what is the roughness of the metallic and non-metallics. So this one here, I want this to be essentially the opposite of what it is. Almost entirely black, a little bit, so there's a little bit of roughness to it, like that. And then this one over here, I want this to be a lot more diffuse. Not entirely diffuse, like somewhat of a blend, because if you look at reference, which you should be modeling off reference, there is a
복사해서 피니스에다가 넣어주고
I want this to be essentially the opposite of what it is. Almost entirely black. A little bit, so there's a little bit of roughness to it, like that. And then this one over here, I want this to be a lot more diffuse. Not entirely diffuse, like somewhat of a blend, because if you look at reference, which you should be modeling off reference, there is some shininess to them. So yeah, but that is it. So you can see very quickly, we have created some very aesthetically pleasing donuts, and have fun with it, guys. Like, create a cool looking donut. That is it. So you can see very quickly, we have created reference, which you use. Not entirely diffuse, like somewhat of a blend, because if you look at reference, which you should be modeling off reference, there is some shininess to them. So yeah, but that is it. So you can see very quickly, we have created some very aesthetically pleasing donuts, and have fun with it, guys. Like, create a cool looking donut. You can use whatever color combinations you want. I really do like it when people experiment and not just follow a tutorial down to a T, but like venture out there and, you know, do interesting things. So try different color combinations, try different icing colors, and you could make something that looks really cool. But that's almost it for our donut. It's pretty well done, which means we can now finally talk about rendering. So as a recap of part one, if you hit F12, that's going to put you into the rendered state. Our camera is really far away from the donut. So actually, let's first fix that. If you go to your camera view, you can just by clicking that little icon there, or by hitting number pad 0, that'll take you there as well. This is the camera view. We're really far away. I mentioned in the start that if you use this key, this button, view, lock, camera to view, that'll let you like grab it and move it around. But there is actually another way. I didn't want to introduce you to too many keyboard shortcuts at the start, but if you hit with the camera selected, Shift tilde key, that will put you in fly mode. The other way to do that, by the way, is to just go view, navigation, fly navigation there if you don't have that key. So anyway, in this mode, it's almost like you're playing a video game. So like I'm playing a first person shooter looking around my scene. W is move forward, just like in a video game. A is strafe left, D is strafe right, and S is back. So WASD, just like a video game. I can also go up by hitting E and then down by hitting Q. And if it's too sensitive, like if the movement is like, you know, crazy fast, the scroll wheel also decides how far, oh goodness, there it is, okay. How
카메라를 선택하고 Shift 키를 누르고 오,
how fast the movement is. So scroll down if it's going too quickly for you. But yeah, I can now place the camera wherever it is I want, and then when it's there, I just click, single left click, and that's there. And by the way, that mode is called fly navigation, and it works also not just from the camera view, but anywhere in Blender. If you ever want to just like, move around, you can use that fly mode. So shift tilde key for that. All right, so we do a render, we get something that looks hideous. Why is that? Well,
하면은 끔찍한 녀석이 나온다. 그러네.
for starters, it's not a very the scene has just got one light in it. But the primary reason, and by the way, yes, that's the rendered view mode, but also if you go to rendered view shading up there, this is the exact replica of that, but just in the viewport, okay? Now, the primary reason this looks bad is because of the renderer, okay? So Blender's default render engine, if you go to your render properties, is called Eevee. Now, Eevee is fast, but it is not accurate. If you are familiar with games, most of you probably are, Eevee is basically a game engine. So it's designed to be really fast. Probably not 60 frames per second, but really, really fast. And it's in terms of the renderer types, there's usually actually, you call them like real time is what this type is, and that is a rasterized render engine. And then you have ray traced or path traced engines, sometimes called offline renderers, which are a lot more accurate but much slower. So this is good if you don't really care about realism. Like maybe you're making a title effect for a TV, thing, whatever, or you're on a really tight deadline, you just want to get something out fast, you can use Eevee. Now you can make it look better than what we have. Like for example, I think because we're using like really small sizes for our donut, you want to increase your cube size and then your lamp, the bias. There you go. You set that all the way to 0, and now it's more appropriate for this size. We've got shadows, but it's still not great. We don't, for example, have shadows on any of our sprinkles because it's just too fine a detail. And the shadow itself, it's just like a blurry mess. So it's just a fakery, and it's just like what's going on with video games. I will briefly mention also that Blender 4.1, which is what this is here, it's in alpha state at the time of this recording. I've been using 4.0 for this whole recording, but this is 4.1, and it's Eevee, but it's completely rewritten. And it is better, right? So the shadows are better. There is actually even some bounce lighting happening, but it's kind of like a fake bounce lighting. And it's definitely better, but it's still not great. So that is the limitation. It's fast, but it is not great. And that's what you get with rasterized real-time engines. So there is another render engine. So go to your render engine settings and click the drop down. Ignore Workbench. That's for like just like basically rendering your
나는 왜 그림자 없어?
viewport, really, for technical stuff. Cycles. So those are the two main engines of Blender. You got Cycles and you've got Eevee. Cycles is what's known as an offline renderer or a path traced, also known as ray traced engine. Now, this looks way better than what we had before. You'll notice, for example, that all of our sprinkles have shadows. By the way, apologies.
오, 됐다. 방송 괜찮니? 살아있니?
If my recording gets a little choppy, it's because it's using the CPU to, anyway. You can see it's got proper shadows on things. There's actually bounce lighting, right? That's like coming off this table here, and it's going underneath the donut. So it's like it's shooting around inside here, and it's shooting back, and it's going over here, which is exactly what happens in the real world. And it's really important for realism to get that bounce. I mean, any room, any architecture, you basically have to use cycles to do it, because that's how you get proper lighting like in the real world. But you get all this for free at the cost of speed. So you'll notice as I move around, whilst my recording goes choppy, that it starts grainy and then it kind of refines itself. And if you look in the top left-hand corner, you've got something that says samples. So as you leave it rendering longer, it's rendering more samples. Essentially, it's just like the computer's just chewing through it. There's technical ways to explain it, but that's the simplest way to think of it. And it'll get clearer as the longer you leave it. Now, there is actually two ways to calculate this. One is to use your CPU, which is what it's on by default. Another is to use your GPU, which is grayed out by default. So let's fix that. Go to Edit Preferences, and then go to System, and you can see at the top there, Cycles, Render Devices. So try switching to one of these tabs and see what you get.
3090.
If you have a device, like myself, that is a GPU that is supported, then you can render on that and it'll be way faster. So just as an FYI, CUDA is NVIDIA, and it's for like cards, like I think 1080 backwards, so like 90s, 800s, I think they used CUDA. Optics was around the 2000 series further on. So Optics is the one that you use if you're using a NVIDIA card today. HIP is for AMD cards, and then you got one API. And I think actually on Apple devices, you'll have a metal option. But see what you have, and then see if you can render with that, because that, with GPU on now, it'll, going back to this, it might actually, the first time you use your GPU, it will say, I think at the top left-hand corner, doing this for the first time, it'll do some pass. It'll be really slow. It might take like 2 minutes, but then after you've done that, every time you open Blender, you should never need to do it again. So it might be slow the first time you activate it, but it should be faster. Now, this is way faster than what we had before. Like you can see how quickly it's clearing through those samples. It's basically real time. In fact, actually, so that noise that I mentioned, right? It's still there, but when you render and also in your viewport, you can use a denoiser. So it's actually not that new. It's like 3-4 years old. I think we started using AI denoisers. NVIDIA released their one for optics, and since then Intel have come out with one. And it basically takes that noisy image, it uses some of the information from the 3D renderer to clear it out whilst preserving the detail. So if you can actually turn it on in the viewport.
뭐래? 트위치 코리아 망했어. 돌아가. 안녕하세요. 트위치 코리아는 내년 2월 29일 철수합니다. 수고하시오. 나 너무 무서워. 항상 감사하십시오. 망사육료에 항상 감사하십시오. 나가 인마. 나갔을 것 같은데? 벌써 나갔고.
By hitting the denoise one. If you've got an NVIDIA card, it'll be way better. If you don't, it'll have to use the Intel denoiser, which is a lot slower. But you can see the noise is practically gone, right? So this is almost real time, which is really, really cool. Now, obviously, not all of you are as lucky, right? I've got 4 3090s. I started, though, on a Pentium 3, I think back in 2003.
아저씨!
And
자기
I mean,
얘기하고 있어.
look, they made Toy Story on computers that you couldn't even sell today because they would be just garbage. Maybe you could for like nostalgic. Anyways, the point is that everybody, when they start 3D, is using a device which is crappy. Don't let it limit you, or don't think, oh, I can't use 3D until I get a better computer. A graphics card is definitely one of the best investments you can
토이스토리
make
개
if you're
레전드네.
thinking like, I want to do this as a career. This is definitely for me. I'm really enjoying this. It's definitely a good
미친
investment because
사람들이었어.
you will be able to produce more renders throughout the day faster. But it is not essential. You can get by with just a CPU. It just means that when you do your render, your final render, instead of it being, done in an hour, you might have to leave it overnight. So it's
좀
obviously
넘겨도
turning
될
to
것
it faster.
같네요.
The fastest is, basically it's going to be the top card, or like the go-to.
4090
NVIDIA is
사래.
just crushing it. I think, where is the AMD? They used to be on. I think AMD's made a mention there. You've also got CPUs on this side. But essentially, just buy the top like gaming card. Usually that's the
1080 이제
one.
없어진 지
But
오래네.
do go here, check it out.
2020도
All right, so we're going to
없어졌습니다.
be using cycles for the rest of this tutorial. And we'll really dive into it in the next part, but I just want to quickly, my lamp is way, way away. So let's just bring that in closer just so that we can see things. And you can actually clear the rotation of an object to make it appear at the center of your 3D scene by tapping Alt-G. Okay, so now, hey, look, that's actually kind of cool.
Alt G? 아니잖아요. 아닌데? 온 건가? 아닌데? 아, 이상해졌어요. 됐다. 내 눈!
G. Okay, so now, hey, look, that's actually kind of cool. I'm going to move my lamp over to here. Just check my recordings. Yeah, my recording's not being affected. And I'll just now reduce the strength of this because it's obviously now way closer. But look at that. Like, look at the shadow that we get coming off this donut. It's like properly tapered. It's not like some fakery. So it's like tight here, and then it's like really faded at the end.
어떻게 낮춰, 파워? 왜, 에? 오케이. 미친. 됐어요. 어? 내 민트 도넛 왜 이래? 누가 기스냈어. 카메라 또 왜 이렇게 움직이지? 내 민트 도넛. 내 민초.
end there. That kind of stuff is really difficult.
오, 괜찮죠?
Difficult to do with a rasterized real-time engine like Eevee. And you also get like all of this proper, like look at the shadows on the sprinkles, the reflections is actually true. It's not like guessing and fakery. Yes, it's a type of fakery, but it's much more accurate. Anyways, I like cycles. I'm a cycles guy. I think most people actually are. The first
사이클스
version of
가이래.
Eevee was not that great. Eevee next in 4.1 might be better. We'll see. But yeah, the first version of Eevee was not really that great. Now, one thing you might notice looking at your donut, and they're going to make one big tweak to this, is that it kind of feels hard. Like the donut doesn't give this kind of like soft feeling to it. And the reason for that is the material. So by default, all materials are, yeah, kind of like hard materials, but fleshy objects like humans as well as food have subsurface scattering. So I'll throw some reference photos here. But you can see this is my hand. I had light coming in like as I was eating breakfast, and I could see the light is actually going through my fingers, right? So that's light that is like, yeah, it's a mushy, fleshy object. So it's passing through it, scattering amongst all the other atoms in the finger, and it's the light is going through to the other side. You also see it in a lot of food. So took these photos at a party. Yes, I am that guy. But you can see that's how you get light that goes to the opposite sides. My daughter was eating a banana, and I was like, look at that banana. Look at that subsurface scattering right there. So donuts and icing have that. And we can do that. We can add that, sorry, by going to the materials.
딸 이제
And
커서
then down here, you've
디지털
got
장의사한테
subsurface.
저거 사진
Okay.
지워달라고 한다.
So here, the biggest one to turn it on, and just like metallic, apparently, this is, by the way, a new setup for 4.0, but just like metallic, it's supposed to be a weight of either 0 or 1. All right. Now, when you do 1, it suddenly turned blue, and you're like, what the hell happened there? That's because the radius, this radius, is this is your X, Y, Z, but also it's your R, G, and your B in this case. And these values are different because it's designed for skin by default. So this is a great setup if you've got skin with blood inside, but we don't. So click, drag down, and then just set these values to 1.
어떻게 하라고요? 딸이알. 아, 진짜 어디서 뭘 누르는 거야? 아, 이거 맞네. 맞네요. 이 녀석 눌러가지고 메타리얼 들어간 다음에 뭐야 너 서브 설페이트 페이스. 요거를
For 4.0, but just like metallic, it's supposed to be a weight of either 0
팀에서 프로그램 하나 샀는데 한국인 개발자가 없다고요?
or 1.
원. 이게 렌더링 된 거라고? 엄마 들어가 봐. 라고. 귀찮게 하네. 큰일 났다. 내 그래픽 카드 터져요. 오히려 멀리 하는 게 좋나? 레디어스 맞지? 맞겠지? 음. 아,
All right. Now,
디노이즈 켜보라고요? 어디 있는데? 아, 이거 아닌가?
now, when you do radius, this Z, but different blood in. Wrong. It's saying that the thickness of the object is 5 centimeters, but this icing is not that. So let's make this 0.01. And now you can see it looks a lot closer. It's still a little dark, because I think it's not 1 centimeter thick. So let's go 0.005.
005? 저게 뭐야? 뭘 바꾼 거야? 스케일. 아, 이게 좀 달라요. 스케일 없어. 아, 잘못 설정한 것 같아. 아닌가? 없어. 요거 일려나? 아, 요거일 것 같아요. 아예 추측. 0.005? 근데 왜 이렇게 변했어, 내 거? 잘못 눌렀나? 하... 칼라가 왜 있는데? 아, 이게 뭐가 다르다. 뭐가 달라요. 볼륨 안에 위에 있는 메뉴 안에 있는 건데 알파. 아, 이 서브 서페이스가 없어. 얘가 서브 서페이스인데 얘를 수정하면은 아까처럼 된다. 서브 서페이스의 색이 이렇게 돼 있어서 얘랑 똑같은 색? 아, 미친, 반대예요. 이렇게 한 다음에 해야 되는 건가? 그럴 수도. 한번 해볼게요, 다시. 아니야. 이거 아니야. 아니야, 먹물 됐어. 4.0으로 바꿔서 하자고요? 그래서 그런가? 도넛 만들기 종료하겠습니다. 강종. 흥미가 사라졌다. 자야 돼. 일찍 자야 되는데. 아. 이래도 안 되면. 얘가 검은색인 게 뭔가 불길하지 않나요? 자러 갈게요. 너무 뜬금없지만 자러 가겠습니다. 저의 도넛의 결말. 팔 분 걸린다고? 기다려봐. 기다려봐요. 이 자식을 혼내주고 자러 가도록 하겠습니다. 뒤졌다 딱대. 벌써. 잊어버린 놈. 내 메뉴판 어디 갔어? 바뀌어도 그렇지 너무 바뀌어버렸는데. 유, 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 없었어. 그 키고 싶은데. 디노이정 가머식인가. 딸 고통에 넘기고 있어 이 자식. 됐나? 생겼다. 아무거나 눌러봤는데 생겼다. 꿀. 쩔죠. 찍신. 찍어서 맞췄다. 찍맛. 서브 서페이스. 웨이트를 1. 아니 왜 난 달라. 0, 0.005. 0.005였는데 내가 0.05를 쳤어 그런가? 어쨌든 해결한 거죠.
Now we can see it's pretty close to its original material. The biggest difference is if I just zoom right in here, let's set it to what it was before. See how it's hard? It almost feels like, it just feels like concrete, right? But then you set this to 1, and look at that. The shadow just starts to feel a little softer, and you get this bleed effect where kind of like the shadow gets like an edge to the shadow where it gets a little more saturated and pinker. And that's subsurface scattering. You don't have to tell it how to do that. It just does it. So you set the weight to 1, these to 1, and then you just set your scale to whatever it is you want. And I'm also going to do it for my sprinkles. So I'm just going to click on one of my sprinkles.
됐나요? 이쁘게 잘 나온 건가?
And yeah, right in here for the subsurface, I'll just do the same thing. Set the weight as 1, these radiuses to 1, and then I'll use a really low value.
어?
Saturated and pinker, and that's subsurface scattering. You don't have to tell it how to do that. It just does it. So you set the weight to 1, these to 1, and then you just set your scale to whatever it is you want. And I'm also going to do it for my sprinkles. So I'm just going to click on one of my sprinkles, and
올래?
yeah, right in here for the subsurface, I'll just do the same thing. Set the weight as 1, these radiuses to 1, and then I'll use a really low value here. Like let's go 0.02.
개 느려. CPU로 바꾸니까 컴퓨터 팬 돌아간다. 무서워. GPU로 다시.
And now you can see, because these sprinkles are, yeah, it's like icing, right? It's just the exact same thing. Yeah, we want some of the light to pass through it. And we don't actually have to bother setting up that, that color ramp system for the metal, because metals, automatically that shader, when you set it to 1, it means it's going to cancel any subsurface scattering that would have appeared there. So we don't have to bother with it. The subsurface is not going to happen on metals. But you can see it starts to feel a lot softer, a lot, I don't know, more pleasing, more delicious looking, like real food, because that's really one of the telltale signs of food is subsurface scattering. Awesome. So in the next part, we're going to start really building out the scene.
렌더러
What I
던
want to do though, at the end of this video, I want to give you some homework, and that is to try to model this plate. Now we're going to do it actually in the next part, but it's simple enough and it's actually possible to use all the tools that I've mentioned in this series so far to model this yourself. Now the reason I'm mentioning next is to try to model this plate. Now we're going to do it actually in the next part, but it's simple enough and it's actually possible to use all the tools that I've mentioned in this series so far to model this yourself. Now the reason I'm trying to give this as homework is that once this tutorial finishes, that's how it's going to be. You're going to have to try to solve problems on the fly. So it definitely helps solidify learning if you can try to apply it by yourself. So have a go. It doesn't matter if you get stuck or you fail at it terribly, because you can just click the next part and see how it's done. But have a go at it now, because then you'll start to you'll just retain the information.
끝난 것 같긴
Anyways,
해요.
go ahead, click here and see how we build the rest of the scene and build that plate.
끝난 것 같아요. 렌더 너무 오래 걸린다. 30 저 아저씨 컴퓨터 3090이었나 3060이었나 걔랑 3배 정도 차이 나나? 1080 Ti? 네 시간 걸렸다고요? 보죠. 타임 얼마 뜨나? 2시간 10분. 엄청 늘어났네요. 저거 바꿔가지고. 서페이스 바꿔가지고. 섭섭해. 이거 렌더링 해가지고 스크린샷 찍으면 되는 건가? 막 줄어들어 근데. 된 걸 저장할 수 있어요? 몰랐다. 자야 되는데. 자야 되는데. 누나한테 혼났는데 안 잔다고. 유튜브에도 누가 계시네요. 종료하고 내일 도너츠 어쨌든 종강했으니까 오랜만에 안 켜져. 크롬조차 안 켜져. 내일은 게임 좀 하고. 안 눌렀고요. 잘하면 적당하고 잘 수도. 무슨 점검만 하면 새로 설치를 해야 돼 게임을. 조명 위치 바꾸고 싶은데 늦었어. 이미 늦었어. 헉, 22년 패치부터 하는데. 에반데. (23년 1월) 패치. 뭐야 끝났어? 54분으로 줄어들었어요. 23년 3월. 아니 이거 런처를 이렇게 할 거면은 왜 해놓은 거야? 런처 업데이트 안 하나요? 라비티님? 1년 전 거부터 패치를 받아야 돼. 47분. 몇 개 이게 썩은 게 있는데 이거 아마 초코 색깔이라고 했는데 썩어버렸네. 아, 16분. 힘내라 힘. 힘내. 이거 이미지에서 세이브하면 되나? 요 경고가 오늘 뜨더라고요. 패치하니까. 라그나로크 저기가 실행 파일이 바뀌었습니다. OK를 누르고 재시작해주세요. 확인. 기다리면 켜졌어. 아까도 2개 킬 뻔했어. 아까도. 켰죠? 근데 얘는 됐어. 이렇게 해서 하나는 접속이 돼서 켜졌는데 다클라를 켜야 되는데 여기서 안 들어가졌단 말이죠. 아, 켜지네요. 역시 재설치가 답이지. 기계는 꼬인 거 풀어내야지. 여기 없고. 다클라겜. 개노다. 개노잼. 왜 또 밖에 나가셨어요? 담탐? 출석 따위 안 해도 나면서 출석하는. 클락겜 망해라. 됐어요 렌더링. 이거 저장 어떻게 해? 아 여기 있구나. Save as 픽처. 도넛? 아 미치 그냥 도넛을 해. 건강. 된 거죠? 됐다. 아 뭐냐 갑자기 렉 걸린다. 끄자. 누가 이렇게 렉을 유발해? 라이팅 몇 개만 더 이쁘게 붙잖아요. 그러니까 라이팅이 좀 너무 중한 느낌이지만 의상 이번에 나온 겁니다. 신규 의상 칼. 닌자한테 딱 껴주면은 아니면 아무튼 지난주 토요일부터 했나? 토, 일, 월, 화, 수. 5일 동안 했는데 잘 끝낸 것 같습니다. 그쵸? 잘 끝낸 건 맞겠지? 오늘 패치해가지고 이게 4차 직업 옷이거든요? 걔 못생겼잖아요. 요거를 이 전에 전직한 옷으로 바꿀 수 있게 하는 기능이 생겼어요. 그럼 뭐 게임이 망했는데. 이 정도 했으면 성공이라고요? 적당히 이제 완벽히는 아니지만 어느 뭐라 해야 되지? 따라서 할 정도는 약간 됐으니까 요 느낌으로다가 그거 그 일본인 영상 그거 보고 하면은 되지 않을까. 일단 내 햄스터 만들기랑 잘 되면은, 아니 햄스터 만들기를 못 따라 하잖아. 인간형이 아니어서. 햄스터는 내가 따로 만들어야 되잖아. 그럼 라그 캐릭터 하나 해가지고 만들까? 아, 누구세요? 라그 캐릭터 크기면은 쉽진 않아도 어쨌든 되긴 되지 않을까? 라는 생각, 아니란 생각, 안 해보고서 덤비는 생각. 아무튼요, 좀 빠르게 도망가겠습니다. 오늘 할 일 일단 목표한 거를 엄청나게 완전히 대만족까진 아니어도 성과가 있었다 정도니까. 이게 왜 안 되지? 시간 내. 아무튼 가도록 할게요. 내일 저 운동 취소됐고요. 아침에 한의원만 있어요. 한의원 갔다가, 근데 한의원도 10시 반에서 11시 반, 집에 오면 12시 막 이렇게 되거든요. 그러니까 먼저 서버 열리면은 먼저 하시려면 하셔도 되고, 그냥 같이 하려면 같이 기다렸다가 하셔도 되고. 그래요. 아, 닉네임 선점이 좀 저기 저기 하긴 한데, 아, 어떡하지, 닉네임? 아, 근데 라운지에 그런 닉네임 있던데. 내가 진짜 마녀. 이런 닉네임으로 최신 글 쓴 사람이 있더라고요. 설마 그 사람이 그 마녀 아니겠지? 오 마이 갓. 아, 약봉다리 3주치. 약봉다리 3주치라 개맞네. 첫날 달려야 된다고. 그니까. 일단 저는 어떻게 할 거냐면, 공수잖아요. 저 그냥 올덱 찍고 전직하고 나중에 어질 찍든가 뭐 그런 식으로 해야 될 것 같은데. 어질 개수라고 처음부터 어질 찍는 거 아닐 거 아니야. 덱스 연락에 찍어가지고 포이즌 스포와 학살을 빨리 해야 되는데. 그러니까요. 초기화도 있고 프리셋도 있어가지고 그런 거 다 까먹었었잖아. 어쨌든 저 뭐야 핸드폰으로도 되긴 하니까 한의원 누워가지고 엎어져가지고 열렸나 안 열렸나 계속 확인해야 돼. 영하 10도 됐어. 아, 근데 진짜 어떡하지 저기. 아, 내 닉네임을 뺏길 것 같진 않는데. 그냥 만들고 올린다고요? 마녀 마녀 사냥. 마녀 사냥으로 아이디 지을까? 저는 뭐 해봤자 풀잎찡보다는 풀잎사귀? 풀잎사귀 만든 적 없으니까 아마 되지 않을까. 담배 사는데 얼어 죽을 것 같다고요? 잘 자요. 얼어 죽지 마시고. 내일 봐요. 점심 잘 챙겨 먹고 만납시다. 빠이.